I am a single mom starting a new business selling seedlings. It's been so wet and so windy and so cold. I honestly don't think anyone's gonna come. Who would even think about buying garden vegetables in this weather?
Hi, I'm Erin. Welcome to my beautiful unschool life. I'm going to tell you what happened when I chased my dream of becoming a permaculture farmer.
Hey, won't you stay a little bit longer? Sorry, didn't mean to, but I heard you cannot undo it, so please stay.
Hi, buddy.
I first met Laura Jean and Garnet in September of 2021. I came across their post on a website called FarmLink, 13 acres of developing permaculture, looking for a young person, couple, or family with practical farming experience, interested in a partnership with an eye to succession. The girls and I came for an afternoon. Laura Jean and I sat by the pond and talked about her vision for the land, a place that mimicked a natural ecosystem and provided food. A farm that gave more to the soil than it took. But, more than anything, a place where she and her husband could live out their lives in nature, and a legacy that would survive long after they were gone. I was all in. I loved the way Laura Jean talked about the land. I was immediately convinced. The girls and I returned a month later in the camper to stay for several days while Laura Jean and I worked out a business model. What they wanted from me was to find a way for the farm to pay for itself without compromising the principles of regenerative stewardship of the land. My proposal was a seedling store selling heirloom vegetable seedlings. This would produce some capital to invest in more lucrative projects down the line, luxury campsites, weekend farm retreats, and an annual festival for teaching permaculture principles and building community. But year one's focus would be building Wild on Turtle Island's legacy seedling store. I spent the winter in a friend's basement apartment, planning and launching the seedling business. A fancy new website, an Instagram feed full of beautiful images of plants and animals, and folding paper pots. Hundreds and hundreds of paper pots. Every other weekend we drove down to the farm. Laura Jean and I pored over seed catalogs and made our choices. As spring arrived, we were starting plants, arranging them on heat mats under lights in her house. Once I'd moved to the property, I began up-potting and moving plants into the greenhouse, and together we built the Roadside market stall.
We are growing 104 varieties of heirloom seedlings to sell at a roadside market stall. The only way to grow heirloom vegetables is to start them by seed. If you don't have the seed starting mats and the lights and the space to start your plants from seed, you have to buy them from the big box stores or the nurseries, and they only sell really limited varieties. The beefsteak tomatoes and the cherry tomatoes. You might find the occasional heirloom vegetable, but they're, the Bonnie Bests and the sort of the run-of-the-mill varieties. I wanted to grow the really weird stuff. I wanted to grow the zebra tomatoes and the kukutsu squash. I came up with the idea that maybe I could fill that gap. I could start the seeds of the rare heirloom varieties of vegetables and sell those, so that all the people who are getting into gardening but don't have the space to do seed starting can have a chance to grow these really cool different varieties. So I presented that idea to Laura Jean and she really liked it. It's not something she'd thought of herself. It was new, it was original, and most importantly, it doesn't have a huge startup cost, because between the two of us, we had enough lights and enough mats that we didn't really need to buy anything more. She already has this greenhouse that we can start seedlings in. She already has a couple of hoop houses that we can just cover and turn into our store. When we were developing our business model in the early days, we both really agreed something that's extremely important to us is that we want to do this as economically and environmentally friendly as possible. So we want to try to reuse and repurpose things as much as possible. We're using these simple little paper pots so that when people take them home, they can just plant this right into the ground. They're not going to have stacks and stacks of these old things sitting around that they intend to reuse but then never actually reuse. Making do with what we have also means that we don't have a lot of space. We didn't want to buy a great big new greenhouse for this. So we're making do with this tiny little space, which means that we only had room to grow 12 plants of every single variety. So yeah, we have 104 varieties, but we only have 12 of each, and we're keeping 3 of those for ourselves because we want to seed save for next year so that we can reduce our expenses for next year. So the store is opening in 5 days, and our last frost date is in 2 weeks. So I thought that would be a perfectly reasonable time to be opening, but we had snow 3 days ago. So our plants are a lot smaller than I thought they would be. Some of them are struggling from the cold. But considering how much we're juggling, you know, trying to make all of this work without investing in a bunch of new products, I'd say things have gone really well. I'm really excited to see what happens. We've had a lot of interest. It's a good time for gardening. A lot of people are getting into it. Everyone's concerned about food security. So hopefully, see, like, look at this little guy. Oh, he got a bit too cold last night. So the store is supposed to open tomorrow, but as you can see, it snowed. We couldn't have picked a worse year to start a new seedling business. It's just ridiculous. So we've had to start moving some of our plants out into the store because there's just not enough room for them in our heated greenhouse, and we're supposed to open tomorrow. So we started with the brassicas, but it's supposed to drop down to -5 tonight. Again, ridiculous. So we put this heater on them, and I need to bring some more things out today because I just don't have room. They're all still in their tiny little cell packs, and they need to be in the paper pots before we can sell them. I honestly don't think anyone's gonna come. Who would even think about buying garden vegetables in this weather? It's just absurd. Absolutely absurd. So today's the day. The store opens this afternoon. Thankfully the sun is shining. The snow has all melted. It's only just like 1 degree above zero, but it's supposed to get a bit warmer later today. I'm not terribly anxious. I'm not really worried. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. We'll see. Hopefully I get to meet some cool garden people. Wish us luck.
The store got off to a great start. 2 cars pulled in the first 20 minutes that I was open.
I shared my dream with you until the morning. Everybody else have done it right. Coming out to see me.
We're 1 week into the Seedling Sales. So far sales have been pretty good. I'm imagining things will pick up as the weather finally warms up, but I've been really happy with all the cool people I've met. The seedlings look a little bit sad right now because the weather has been just so lousy. They all got a little bit of frostburn and they all got a little bit of sunburn, but I'm confident that everything's gonna bounce back pretty quickly. Like, look at these guys. Sad little things. Notice the wind still hasn't relented. I've never experienced such a windy spring in my whole life. Summer has arrived very suddenly. Even though the store's been open for 2 weeks, I'm still up potting some things for the store. Some things that just didn't grow very well and they weren't really suitable to put out before, but I can put them out now. The garden needs a lot of prep work. It's huge. It's a circle with a diameter of 100 feet, and there are 6 beds in each of the 4 quadrants. One of the quadrants we have handed over to my chickens.
Laura Jean is an experienced gardener, and I'm just a beginner. But her disability is making it harder and harder to do the work. So the garden became mostly my responsibility. We all worked together to prep the beds and install fences and gates. So I have the Seedling Store, the giant garden, chickens, ducks, and I decided to get meat rabbits. Bethany would do most of the work. She would prove that she could handle the responsibility to get her own pet one day. And we would get some food. But first I needed to build a cage that was big enough for kids to sit in and strong enough that dogs can't get in. The store closed in early June. I was really happy with how it went, considering it was my first year and how totally uncooperative the weather was. With the store closed, the push was on to get all of the unsold plants in the ground.
But this is pretty pink.
The soil is heavily clay and very unhealthy, so we wanted to experiment to discover which method would regenerate this old farmland the quickest.
2 is cardboard and decomposed straw and leaves. This one is straw bales that have been soaked in urine and water on May 1st. Number 4 is cardboard with sawdust and straw that's partially decomposed. Number 5, this is sand, gypsum, and compost. We're gonna till it all in. I've also added some old rotten eggs. Number 6 is the same as number 5, and I will not be adding eggs to this one. So we'll be able to compare if the one without eggs and the one with eggs have any sort of significant difference. Okay, so I'm trying something a bit weird over here. On the north side of these bales, I'm gonna plant loads of cucumbers and melons. So I've got, this is the borage that I laid down the other day. Loads and loads of Pumphrey on top. These are just some weeds that I chopped and dropped here, and then I got a layer of straw. So what I'm doing is I'm just poking a hole straight through all of these layers, and I'm just filling that hole with some potting soil. Just putting my plants in that potting soil like that. So I'm not even putting them in the ground. And I don't know, we'll see if it works.
We also planted some veggies out around the property. Scattered around the farm are a dozen hugel beds, where the soil has been regenerated by stacking organic matter in large mounds. Since I had a lot of seedlings left over from the store and not enough space in the garden for them, I decided to plant some things in the hugel beds. They would have nicer soil, but not the protection of the fences and gates.
I want to keep planting until we're done our plants.
All right.
Until there's one.
Okay.
Spring progressed, the farm grew. Baby chickens, baby kittens, puppies, and a box full of young guinea fowl.
Whoa, look at zoom.
A garden year that started off cold and wet continued to be difficult, but now it was sweltering hot.
You getting hot? I am mulching so that this water doesn't just evaporate in the sun. So I planted these exactly 2 weeks ago, and they're doing dreadfully. So it's been a month since I planted these tomatoes, and they're still doing dreadfully. Just completely chewed off whatever I'm gonna do. It's the the wrong things.
One day when I was working in the garden, I saw a huge black cloud of smoke in the field right behind the farm. Our neighbor was getting ready to harvest his wheat when his combine sparked a fire, and the whole wheat field went up so quickly.
So what do we do?
Fire trucks will be coming here and they'll come around this side and put it out.
I hope they get it before it hits that forest.
But they need to make sure they don't get the trucks between downwind of the fire.
But he's going right in it, eh?
That's a brave farmer.
Yeah.
And there's one good reason why you should always have all your equipment readily accessible and easily extinguished.
Yeah.
I'm hoping the house isn't on fire.
How can he even see? Jeez, he's crazy. But like, how can he even see?
It took about an hour for them to put out the fire. And the farmer was so extraordinarily brave to do what he did, to save his crops and the neighborhood. The website and Instagram accounts were bringing lots of attention to the farm. I gave a dozen tours, and we launched the pilot program of our Be a Farmer weekend experience 3 months ahead of originally scheduled. If that wasn't enough, we decided to build the campground and launch the festival ahead of schedule as well.
So we're hosting a festival here for Lughnasadh, which is the time of year that's exactly halfway between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. It's the first harvest festival. Lughnasadh comes from the Celtic tradition. The belief system that Laura Jean and Garnet ascribe to is sort of a combination between Anishinaabe and Celtic and Cree, because there's a lot of overlap between the different belief systems. So we wanted to hold some sort of festival as sort of like an open house of the property to sort of welcome people to what this place is and what we're doing here, and just to sort of build a bit of community. And then on top of that, for me, I really wanted to have something that whenever I take my kids to a festival, it's like spend money, spend money, spend money, spend money, spend money, and I spend 90% of the time just trying to get Abby to stop screaming at me because she thinks I hate her because I want to buy her every single thing she sees. So I wanted to have a festival that people could bring their kids to and have fun without having to deal with that constant pressure to spend money. So we are putting on a big free festival. We're trying to do everything with stuff that we already have so that it doesn't cost us any money. And there are only 4 of us. Laura Jean, Garnet, me, and their son Adam, who doesn't live here. He comes by regularly. There are only 4 of us putting the whole thing together. So it's a big job, and I'm not sure if we will be ready. We've got all of this that needs to be cleared up. The inside of this shed needs to be cleaned up because we're going to be having people in here for the meal. We need to finish the outhouse, which has been the biggest job by far, beyond all other jobs. The toilets are done. They're going to be old school compost toilets, and today's Wednesday and the festival is on Sunday. This whole area here is going to be kids games on both sides of the bathroom. And then I'm setting up the mini golf course over there, which is something I need to get working on. They're for the fire pits for the campsites. Those need to be finished up. So our mission is to set up a mini golf course. We're calling it Wild Golf, wild with an E, because Wild is the name of the farm, Wild on Turtle Island, and Wild because look at this grass. That is not golf course grass. 3 days until the festival. This is my comprehensive to-do list for the last 3 days. No biggie. We need to get covers on these. This is where we're going to be serving the food. That's going to be the buffet table.
That's going to be the registration desk. We have a big grocery store fridge that we were going to keep all the food in, but it turns out it doesn't work properly. So we're going to fill all these up with water and freeze them, and that's going to keep our food cold. Looks like they need a really good clean though. We weighed our rocks for the stone putt. Here's one of our sheafs for the sheaf toss. Alright, first 4 holes are done. And we don't have any actual holes. We just have paint marks that you need to aim for. Right now Abby's helping me set up the search and find games. We've got 2 different scavenger hunts, a treasure map hunt, and an orienteering course. So it's actually very time consuming. So the festival is tomorrow. The sun is setting as we speak. I still need to get the registration desk all set up. We still need to get the dining tents all set up. The games are mostly set up, at least the throwing games anyways. We spent much of the day today setting up tents so that people would have a nice shady place to stand, because it's supposed to be really hot tomorrow. We also spent quite a lot of time cleaning the shed out. This is where the games are going to be. There's a water gun shooting range is going to be there. This is fishing. This little tent is going to be for beading. This tent is something I call the Tinker Tent, which is just full of a bunch of stuff that kids can just build things with. That's kind of a daycare inspired thing. This tent here is actually going to have the beanbag toss, and this thing here is called Leapfrog, but I think I'm going to move it over into this space right here. On the end, I still need to set up a net for this frisbee toss, and here is where the search and find games are going to be. There's still a lot to do. We're about 3 hours in, no, 2 hours in. 2 hours in? 2 hours in. And there's my little registration desk. And if you have a look, all of these people have shown up. That isn't even everybody yet. We still have a few more people that haven't come. We've mostly got things together. I need to do some dishes so that we can eat off of them. And I don't even know. I don't even know. But so far so good. So it's the next day. We have a few guests still here. Most only stayed for day 1. We had 2 tents camp overnight, and now day 2 we're doing workshops. It's looking like it's gonna storm, so we're kind of packing stuff up before the storm hits. For the most part, it's been an absolutely fantastic success. It's been really good. So we probably had close to 100 people come. I think my favorite thing about the way we did this festival is that we used real dishes, and we didn't quite have enough for everybody. So when people were done eating, we had to wash the dishes before we could have dessert. And washing dishes was just such a communal thing that loads of us stood around talking to each other, getting to know each other, you know, telling each other stories, talking about things we had in common. Another thing that was really awesome was in the evening when it was time for the dogs to go out for their run, because there's so many dogs and it's so chaotic, we told everybody to come into the garden where there was a fence around. And all the children went and fed the chickens, and all the adults talked with me about my garden. We talked about their gardens. It was a real community feel, and it felt really good. It was really enjoyable. Still people here, but we've already started packing up the midway because it looks like there's a storm coming. And again, everybody's helped together to take down the tents and move all the dishes inside. and get everything ready to go while the kids sort of entertain each other because they've kind of become friends. All in all, I would say it's been a smashing success.
Propounding that we have kinship with all life and that each
Another thing I've loved about this festival is that my kids have made friends. Yes, they're doing dangerous things completely unsupervised. That's an important part of making friends. By this time it was August. We were settling into our new home really well. Laura Jean and Garnet had become like family to us.
delivering willow branches.
And Wild on Turtle Island was really beginning to feel like home. But winter was only a few short months away, and I needed a house before the snow came. In the next episode, I'm going to tell you all about what it was like trying to build my own house with very little building experience. I'm so glad that you decided to join me on this